to my colleagues. Good morning to the people of the territory. Good morning to Central staff and the testifiers. As I sit here, I offer Bill number 35-0248. This is a resolution to petition Congress to give the Virgin Islands residents an opportunity to elect their Attorney General. As a talk show host for many years in this territory, I had listened to the cries of the people speaking many times of their need and want and desire to have an elected Attorney General. When I started on my campaign trail over 12 years ago, one of the things that I pushed was for an elected Attorney General. I continued on and I did quite a bit of research as to why I was continuously hearing the people of this territory speak to the need and their want and desire to have an elected Attorney General. And in my research, I found out that a referendum, which was brought forward by this institution several years ago, was placed on a ballot. And over 73% of the people that went out to vote that year voted to have an elected Attorney General. Senators such as Holland Redfield, Roosevelt David, Ali Petras, Senator Camacho, these were all the senators that came together to get that resolution put forward on behalf of the people, and the people spoke. Several things happened, and here we are, fast forward to 2024, and we still do not have an elected Attorney General. One of the things that we have the ability to do is put this inside of a constitution. My first dabble into politics was in 2007 when I attempted to run for the 5th Constitutional Convention.
And here we are. Excuse me, Senator, I'm going to just allow you to introduce the bill, and then you can get into your debate matters after. But just the introduction of the bill, please.
Well, this is the first time that I'm told, well, when you say just the introduction, because I've introduced bills several times and I was afforded an opportunity for the past 3 years to explain why I'm bringing this bill forward in my introduction. So you're the first person saying, so please explain to me what is your interpretation that you feel is just the introduction, because for almost 4 years I've always explained why the bill is coming forward in my introduction. What is it you desire, Mr. Chair?
For you to introduce the bill, and we proceed with any debate thereafter.
This was not a debate. This was me sharing information about the bill as a form of introduction. But again, this is Bill 35-0248. This is a bill, a resolution petitioning the United States Congress to amend the revised Organic Act of the Virgin Islands to authorize the people of the Virgin Islands to elect an Attorney General. And in doing so, I am asking my colleagues to listen to the testimony today. If you have any questions or concerns, if you have any issues, please speak up, because I will be more than willing to answer any questions, as I'm sure we will engage in asking the testifiers. I am asking for your support of this piece of legislation. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for, thank you very much. As we're about to deliberate, I just wanted to put on the record that while many of the testimony that was brought forward shared many suggestions, there is a very poignant line that is inside of this document that gives the legislature the power, if this is passed, to add all of those things in at a later date. And that specific sentence says the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands and the legislature of the Virgin Islands to prescribe by laws the Attorney General's qualifications and terms of office. So that was deliberately put in there in Section 1 to give the legislature body the power to do quite a bit of the suggestions that you guys have made. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well noted. And before we proceed to...
I just wanted to put two things on the record. One of the things that our governor, when he was campaigning, pushed for an elected attorney general, and when he was elected, he submitted to this body legislation to create an elected attorney general. And this body was told through legal counsel it could not be done. Henceforth, even when I put in legislation to do it, I was told it had to be done in resolution form to petition Congress to alter the revised Organic Act. And I also wanted to put on the record the continuous dialogue in regards to, for example, the statement of the fish fry dynamic. I, as a candidate, we all go out and solicit donations, but at the end of the day, anything can affect a human being. We have to make decisions on behalf of the people, so it's up to the people to elect decent human beings that will not be swayed by monies to alter laws and do things that are wrong. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon once again. I would like to make sure, put on the record, that there are several senators in this body that received donations from Jeffrey Epstein. So to make that an argument, I am not supporting that today. Please. And there are several senators in this body that have gubernatorial aspirations. Several senators from within this body have left this body to run for the governorship. So please, let us not try to attribute everything to electing an attorney general. Because the fact of the matter is, if we're going to sit here and tell the public that they're good enough to elect the governor, they're good enough to elect us as senators to sit here and represent them, but somehow miraculously they can't figure out how to elect an attorney general when 13,000 of them went to the polls already and told us, their representatives, we want this done. Shame on us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank
you. Just for clarity, I'm going to leave that alone. Good afternoon once again to my colleagues, to the testifiers. There are several things I want to address here. I'm not sure what the rogue behavior comment was in regards to, but apparently speaking truth on this legislative floor is offensive to some. 1 year versus 10 years has been the statement of two different individuals here. In the resolution, the reason why I opted to do 3 years, it was because our laws allow for individuals running for Senate to have a 3-year term. 3 years prior to the proceeding of the next general election. I didn't want to make the term so small that people are not ingrained in our community to the point that they really don't know us as a people, our culture, and who we are. I didn't want to make it so great and far out that it's almost unreachable to be able to run for this office when you might have been embedded within this community. One of the things that is continuously being spoke about here today is funding and money. I am one of 15 senators, and we are now in an election year. And when we go out, we solicit donations. People contact us and offer us funding to help with our campaigns, all 15 of us. And I am sure, like one of my colleagues said, sometimes there is undue pressure. But the very electorate that went to the polls and put each one of us in here, they made the decision that we're going to trust you to be our representative. We're going to trust that you are a decent human being. We're going to trust that you're going to be fair to us. We're going to trust you're not going to fall into the hands of those that are offering money just to create laws for their personal benefit. I have sat in this institution and watched a lot of things over the last 3.5 years. I see people get up and want to give the public one perception of who they are, but in reality, it's not the same thing. When we have a people that have gone to the polls and have said, we want an elected attorney general, for some reason, this body over the years continuously figures out a way to tell them, yeah, you told us this is what you want, but we don't think it's necessary. We don't think that's what you should do. Well, then why do these polls? I sat here and I listened to the comments of fish fries. I, as an independent candidate, I've never held a food sale or fish fry ever. I got elected. So there are some of us that will get into this body without doing those things. The people decide. And when are we going to get away from always speaking to them that they're smart enough to put us here to make decisions for them, but somehow they're not smart enough to elect someone that could be their attorney general? That is where I took offense for my people. I also heard about the politicizing of this office. By nature, this office is politicized.
1 minute.
Give this office an opportunity to be independent and elected and be held accountable to the people. I could understand that. But I also take note, several individuals here spoke today and specifically talked about the potential of the undue pressure coming from a governor. I don't want anybody to walk away with the impression that this is a knee-jerk piece of legislation I'm putting forward here. This legislation was submitted January the 11th, 2021. And this is far before any of these firings, people leaving office. This was already submitted. Because when I got elected and got sworn in, I came in with a mission to do the will of the people. And that was always my motive. So any other aspersions outside of that has nothing to do with me. All of the suggestions that were made by Mr. Chair, may I wrap up?
You may.
Thank you. All of the suggestions that were made by several individuals here, the Board of Elections, the AG's office, I applaud them. Within this resolution, all we are seeking to do is say, Congress, can you give the legislature permission to allow us to craft legislation that we can elect our attorney general? That's what we want. And at the end of the day, between the 15 of us, we'll decide that. But one of my colleagues made a note in regards to, let's wait again now for the 6th Constitutional Convention. 2007 is when the 5th Constitutional Convention started. From then up until now, we still debating over this 5th Constitutional Convention, which included an elected attorney general. So even in that body, the will of the people was spoken. It was included in the 5th Constitutional Convention. But because we can't decide how to get that sorted out, we on to a 6th. So here we are again telling the people to sit back and wait. Let me wait till the 6th, maybe for another 20 years. We have to stop. The people put us here to represent them. Now, as my colleague, is one man, one vote. We are all different and unique people in this institution. But I always came in here with one agenda. Put the people and their needs first. Nothing more, nothing less. And I am asking my colleagues to support the will of the people because they have clearly said to us over and over again, we would like an elected attorney general. Let their voice be heard. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I move to offer Bill number 35-0248, a resolution petitioning Congress of United States Congress to amend the Revised Organic Act of the Virgin Islands to authorize the people of the Virgin Islands to elect an Attorney General of the Virgin Islands. That this bill be voted on favorably in this committee and sent to the Committee of Jurisdiction, Rules, and the Judiciary. I so move.
The bill.
To my colleagues, good afternoon to the testifiers, good afternoon to the people of this territory. My first question has to do with the selection process. Is it going to be one where it's open for all? How do you said you had about, is it 17 or so individuals, and it might be only limited to what, 4 or 6? How are you going to select who those individuals are?
Roy Moorhead, Chief of Security. What we're going to do is we're going to ask them, is this something that they would like to participate in? And those that answer in the affirmative, we will put them through the same requirements as the Virgin Islands Police Department does for their officers. We would go through a screening, we would go through the...
Well, I understand that. Let me say this. You said you only need about 4 to 6, if I recall. What if 12 of them say yes?
Well,
so I'm saying, how do you select the number you want at the end of the day? Because you might have more than the amount you actually want to be peace officers.
Well, Roy Moorhead, Chief of Security, Havenside Mall, we'd go through a selection process just as if you would, if we were hiring new employees. We would have interviews and we would review their backgrounds, and then we would make a determination.
How often do you guys have criminal activities? For example, at Havenside Mall, do you guys keep a stat report of the activities of that sort? And do you utilize that information to help curtail crime in that area? Because sometimes when you know what type of situations you're dealing with, it could help you to prevent future situations. Do you collect that type of data?
So all incidents are logged in our incident log system, and we don't necessarily keep stats on specific crimes, but we do have, as I indicated earlier, several times a week where we have to call 911 to get police assistance.
Okay. Now, what is the difference between potentially utilizing an outside entity versus going through the process of having your own peace officers? Because for me, that's what is the stark difference for you? I understand why you want to do it, but what is the stark difference for you? Is it about the money? Is it about, internal controls? How did you come up with going down this pathway as an option?
Roy Moorhead, Chief of Security, Havenside Mall. I think Havenside Mall is owned by the GRS, and I think we feel we have a responsibility to provide that safety and security for our tenants and our guests that come onto the mall. We have a very a great relationship with VIPD. They respond anytime we call. So at the end of the day, it is either we do it or we tap the resources of VIPD to do it. And VIPD resources may be limited. So this is something that we think that we can do, and we could do it because we will have the officers on our property, right there to respond.
Currently, how the makeup is? Do you guys have like officer stations, where individuals can go to file complaints, or if something happened while security might not have been around, that they could directly connect with someone on the properties that you guys own?
Time.
Or is this a situation where they're going to be built once? Because you're literally creating your own police department. That's basically what's going to happen when you have all these peace officers.
So, Roy Moorhead, Chief of Security, Havenside Mall. So we do have a security control center, and we have officers assigned to that center. We do have a security booth at the front of the mall that an officer is assigned in that area. And then we have officers that rove the property. With as many people as we have on the property, we really have to have that presence throughout the mall when ships are in port. So yes, we take police incident reports. So if something happens, then our officer would respond and take a report.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your responses. Mr. Chair, I heard time call. I will continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alma Francis Heiliger.
Good afternoon once again to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. My first line of question has to do with the banning of the assault rifles. Currently, does the Virgin Islands Police Department have a listing as to how many assault rifles are registered in the territory? And do you also keep a listing of weapons used during crimes? Because I'm trying to figure out the impact this piece of legislation potentially might have in regards to who already have these types of weapons registered, as well as are these weapons currently being used in some of the crimes happening in the territory? Do you have those types of statistical data that the VIPD keeps?
Assistant Commissioner Elsko, thank you for that question. So we do have records of individuals that have assault type weapons. That information can be reduced to a list. We don't have necessarily a list, but it can be reduced to a list.
Okay. When it comes to consequences, are there any? This is where my concern is coming in from listening to testifiers as well as listening to the proponents of the piece of legislation with assault rifles. I am very much a balanced person, and I need to make sure I'm not stepping on anyone's toes constitutionally. And while I am hearing it from one perspective, I'm also hearing it from another, and I don't feel I am getting a definitive answer to allow me to keep that happy balance to make sure I'm not infringing on anyone's rights. As legislators, we do have the right to pass legislation to limit access to certain things, but I want to make sure we're doing it constitutionally. So to the chair to legal counsel, when it was shared in regards to the reporting of the decision of the Supreme Court that some of the things that we're attempting to do here, as one of the testifiers said, has already been covered by the Supreme Court, are you of the opinion that this piece of legislation, when it comes to the banning of certain types of weapons, on our part, is this constitutionally okay for us to move forward if this is something we were willing to support?
Legal counsel, you may proceed.
May I respond?
You may respond.
Through the chair to Senator Francis Heiliger. I think, as I indicated before in an inquiry to Senator, in a response to an inquiry from Senator Franklin Johnson, that the Supreme Court, and more importantly, what has happened since several Supreme Court decisions Most notably, I believe it's the Heller decision that occurred in the 2000s, that the Supreme Court has allowed states and territories and jurisdictions to enact reasonable regulations that would regulate, and in some cases, some states have gone as far as to ban assault weapons as a result of various incidences occurring in the states. For example, in Sandy Hook, in Connecticut, as a result of that incident, if I'm not mistaken, the state of Connecticut has a total ban on assault weapons as a result of the incident at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So specifically to your question, what we would have to do is look further at the even more recent Supreme Court decisions, but I know the general overarching principle articulated by the court has been that states can enact reasonable restrictions on certain classes of weapons, including assault weapons, that do not run afoul of the Second Amendment. There, obviously, given the change in the ideological balance of the Supreme Court, obviously some cases have been tested with respect to the principle of reasonable regulations. So that's something that we could look further at. But on its face, the legislature of the Virgin Islands does have the authority to enact reasonable restrictions on weapons, including assault weapons.
Time.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I ask one final question?
Yes, you may conclude at this time.
Thank you. My other question has to do with the commissioner basically having to deal with the importation of parts for guns, certain parts. The only thing that I know what and how stringent the commissioner's job is, especially being the top law enforcement individual for the entire Virgin Islands. And I fully understand what the piece of legislation wants to do, but I need to hear, do you think this is an additional undue burden on the commissioner or on his office, or is there a possibility for this type of level of scrutiny to be placed maybe someplace else within the department? That is the VIPD.
Oh, Roger. So thank you for that question, ma'am. Sydney Olsko, Assistant Commissioner of VIPD. Based on what we've seen, we would have the commissioner work with the FLLs in the community, the licensed dealers. That way they can take some of the load off. But I think the AG said it best. There needs to be some clarity regarding the identity of parts, and it needs to be very specific.
And I also have to agree with that. So you're willing to work with other counterparts with the dealers to help lessen the load, as well as we need to tweak it to make sure that we can identify specifically what the job description really is, specifically as it relates to the part. Okay, I will make a decision accordingly as we continue, and I will continue to listen. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
Thank you. So